Hi guys, Mrs. Elder here. I wanted to walk you through a couple tips for when you're doing multiple choice. We've talked about how poetry is very subjective and how there are many right answers a lot of the time. But I told you that in order to have a right answer, because there are also wrong answers, you have to have support or textual evidence. So today, while we're practicing multiple choice, of course, with multiple choice questions, there is only one right answer. And so we have to learn how to navigate that dealing with a medium of such as poetry where it feels like it is so subjective. And that's the biggest complaint I hear from students, is that they don't like poetry, especially studying poetry in class, because it feels like it can just be anything you want it to be. So today we're going to work on the right answer for poetry. So these sort of tips or this advice that I'm going to give you is applicable to all multiple choice, but it's especially true for like reading multiple choice. There was something else I was going to tell you. What was it? Well, anyway, on to the poem Trust that you have hopefully read at this point. If you haven't, pause the recording, go and read the poem, and then come back. Okay, number one is a pretty straight up question. You just need to go and look and see how the word trust is being used. And this one's pretty easy. I don't think you're going to struggle with this one too much. So I'm going to skip over number one. Let's take a look at number two. Number two says, which quotation can best be described as conveying the idea of freedom? Okay, the most important word in that question is freedom, right? That is what we're looking for. So I'm going to look through my answer choices and see if I can identify any words that I might associate with freedom. First thing that comes to mind, so ship could be freedom, but it also says that fish will never near a ship. So that doesn't really imply freedom to me. Long living elephants, no. Through vast canyons, horses run. That does feel very free to me because I picture horses running through this big, wide open canyon. And that is sort of like, I think that people use that visual of horses running free as a very as the very epitome of freedom. Kind of like, if you can remember back to Bless Me Ultima, the vaquero life, right? That life of freedom, not being tied down with the horses and the running. So, and then we have the few birds at my feeder watch the window. Well, birds that are at a feeder are not necessarily free because they need the feeder in order to live. Obviously, they are dependent upon the feeder, which is actually going to come up in another question. So I think my best option here is C. So all I did for that one was I identified the most important word in the question, and then I went through every single answer choice. And you do need to look at every single answer choice and try to find a reason that it was either worth keeping or worth getting rid of. That's right. Worth keeping or worth getting rid of. I know that we're working online in a virtual platform. This isn't always possible, but when you're doing pen and paper assignments, I highly suggest that you actually mark through words that you think don't work, to remind yourself why that answer is wrong. And then you can either call them strike out or kill the answer choices on the actual letter. So like when you've decided that A doesn't work, maybe because fish will never near a ship, it's really the whole answer choice that doesn't work, then you can cross out the A. Okay. In the first 12 lines, the poet uses imagery to describe. Okay, since it's referring back, I should always go back to the poem and look. The first 12 lines is the majority of the poem, but it ends, 10, 11, 12. So it ends right here. And there is, in fact, I noticed when I was reading, a tone shift right here as well. Oh, my battery's dying. That's not good. Well, I'll try to finish this quickly. The first 12 lines, if I were to answer that question myself, really have to do with she is mentioning a lot of different animals, a lot of different nature things, but not just animals in nature. We have these animals in nature that are not really seen by humans very often, right? So let's take a look at our answer choices and see what lends itself. So, a world apart from human culture. Well, that's kind of similar to what I said, so we're going to leave that. A hostile environment of predators and prey. Well, hostile is way too strong, and I didn't see any evidence of hostile. That's a trap trying to get you to think that because they're wild animals that it has to be hostile and that there has to be predators and prey. But there was nothing in the poem to support that particular image. which is what we're looking for. An ancient pre-human landscape. There's no support for anything ancient. And in fact, he does seem to be present at the end of the poem. I know those aren't the lines we're talking about, but it doesn't seem to me to have any support of ancient or pre-human. A community of anthropomorphic animals. You might need to use your dictionary on this one. Anthropomorphic means having human characteristics. And so I don't see that either. I don't see that these animals are very human-like at all. So that leaves me, of course, with A. But notice how I went through each answer choice, and a lot of the times what you're doing is you're finding 3 wrong answers. And instead of finding a right answer, it can be very helpful to think about, why might this answer choice be wrong? What is wrong with this answer choice? You have to remember that these passages come from STAR, okay? And STAR is a statewide standardized test. So people are paid to write these tests, and then they go across to the entire state. That's a lot of kids. So they are very careful about their answer choices. They don't want to have 2 possible right answers. So there needs to be a reason that they can prove why 3 answers are wrong. And there needs to be a reason they can prove why 1 answer is right. So keep that in mind about support from the text. What can I support? What do I know for sure? What can I go back and point to say, yeah, no, see here, this is where I see a world apart from human culture. And see here, this is where I see a world apart from human culture. For example, which has never, I'll move my mouse, which has never been seen and never will be seen by any human eyes. Never near a ship. Unidentified flowers on unmapped marshes, right? All of that points to away from human culture or apart from human culture. Number 14, I kind of brought up earlier in line 14. It's significant to the theme of the poem that birds are at